All right, ladies and gentlemen. Today we are going to attempt to be revisiting the Paladin versus Mage matchup. I made a guide for it, but sometimes it takes me a while to figure out how to really package my ideas and convey them in such a way, both visually and, verbally, to really get what I'm trying to say across to people. Now, the important thing to note here in this particular matchup is that this is not only this is the longest, most complicated matchup for Paladin PvP that there is in the entire game. And the matchup is at its most complex in a dueling environment and gets significantly easier for the Paladin in non-duel environment type scenarios, if that makes any sense. The matchup also changes significantly based upon what type of paladin you actually are. So, for example, I've got the four main types of paladin here. We have Holy Shock Paladin. Blessing of Sanctuary is usually the icon for Holy Reckoning Paladin, if you didn't know that. No paladin, with the sole exception of Holy Reckoning, picks up Blessing of Sanctuary. Not even Reckoning really spends the talent point on Blessing a Sanctuary. They can, but they usually don't. So when a paladin has Blessing Sanctuary, they're almost always a Holy Reckoning paladin. We have the Reckoning symbol for Reckoning. That's usually considered the universally recognized symbol for Reckoning. Classic World of Warcraft is the actual Reckoning symbol. And then we have your various types of Deep Ret Paladin, whether they're Control Deep Ret Paladin or they're like so forth and so on. All the different variations of Deep Ret Paladin, we always use Seal of Command for it. So how a Holy Shock Paladin will approach this matchup will differ than a Ret Reckoning Paladin will approach this matchup. My bad. Then a Holy Reckoning, then a Ret Reckoning, then a Deep Ret Paladin will approach this matchup. But I think I've finally figured out a way to convey the matchup in general, which is why I bothered to make this video with a hypothetical. Okay, so here's our hypothetical scenario. I'm going to walk you guys through our hypothetical first, and then we'll talk about matchup specifics. So our hypothetical scenario is, what if the paladin is unkillable? Okay? Meaning that no matter what the mage does to try to kill us, we're always going to survive with 10% life. We're always going to heal to full, and then we can do stuff. Like, what if us as the paladin is physically unkillable, either because we have enough HP to survive their nonsense so we can heal to full, or because we're in a resist suit, which is basically the same difference, right? And then let's also say that we have a 10% chance that every time we touch this mage in melee, he dies. Okay, follow me on this? 10% chance we touch the mage in melee, they die. Now, that kill might look a little dynamic because it might not kill them right away, but they die to the Hammer of Wrath shortly after, or if they don't die to the Hammer of Wrath shortly after that, we do some skeleton summoning shenanigans on them, blah, 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 blah. It's just that if we make physical melee contact with the mage and we put damage into them, there's a 10% chance that damage that we do, they either die outright or it leads to a scenario where they die shortly after. Okay? So that's our scenario. We're unkillable, and we have enough damage that we can actually kill the mage 10% of the time when we make contact. What does that PvP scenario look like? Now, the reason why we're going to walk through this is because once we get out of this, we're going to observe that in this hypothetical scenario, the mage cannot win, and they will eventually die to the paladin 100% of the time. Okay? In this hypothetical scenario, under dueling conditions, which is the most difficult conditions for PvP for a paladin. All right? Then we're going to come out of our hypothetical and start realizing which classes or which specs of paladin with the gear that we like to wear has this ability pros and cons wise. So, for example, the Holy Shock Paladin, because he doesn't have Seal of Command or Reckoning, doesn't really have they have the unkillable thing checked off the box, but they won't have the when I make contact with the mage, it's a 10% chance that they die checked off the box. So PvP for them is going to look a little bit different. Hint, hint, it's going to revolve around a lot of books. It's going to revolve more around the mana war side of things to kill a mage. The actual damage side of things to kill a mage. Holy Reckoning can gear in such a way that they actually do meet these requirements in this scenario, where you have a 10% chance to kill the mage when you make contact with them, and you're pretty well survivable. You're damn near unkillable against all the things the mage can do. So the scenario that we're presenting translates almost 1-to-1 to a well-built Holy Reckoning Paladin. And then when you look at Ret Reckoning, for example, Ret Reckoning definitely has the death touch checked off the box, but they're so bad in their survivability that they usually have to wear like full resistance suits. So the question then becomes for them, is it possible to wear enough resist gear that we're both reasonably unkillable, but at the same time, when we touch this mage, even in the full resist suit, is there a good chance that they just die outright because, Ret Reckoning Paladin? And things of that nature, you might be like Jom Gobber's Trinket, Hand of Justice might be involved with that, and some other little trinket shenanigans and so forth and so on might come into play with that type of scenario. However, typically what happens with the Ret Reckoning Paladins is if you go watch the previous guide, right, you'll begin noticing that, because this video is supposed to be a supplemental to the previous guide, that there's all these things that a Ret Reckoning Paladin can do where they can sit in their resist gear and then use items like Gnomish Mind Control Cap, Goblin Rocket Helm, what's the other one? The Gnomish Cloaking Device in conjunction with like Goblin Rocket Boots, that you can actually switch out of your resistance gear into PvP gear, force the mage to ice block, and then very quickly get back into your resistance suit. So in other words, when I don't have the death touch when I'm in the resist suit, but I am unkillable, but I can get out of that resist suit and into a killable to force out the ice blocks and or kill the mage, and then right back into the resist suit. You can flip-flop between the two, getting the best of both worlds simultaneously, while never having it both at the same time. So a Holy Reckoning can just be in the same gear, and they'll both be unkillable and have a 10% chance to kill the mage when they touch them, whereas the Ret Reckoning has to do it a little bit differently. But theoretically, but theoretically, if you want to sit down and crunch the numbers, there's probably a nice middle ground for Ret Reckoning, where you have a lot of resist gear on and you're reasonably unkillable, but at the same time, you still have like the 10%, the 12%, the 15% death touch on this mage. And the combination of that mixture between the two is going to be a nightmare scenario for any mage to deal with. By the time we get to deep Ret, particularly Control Ret, they're in a very similar scenario to the Holy Reckoning Paladin, where when they touch the mage, RNG can come their way. There's about a 15% chance RNG will go their way. And if RNG goes their way, they have enough CC that they have a bit of a death touch scenario going on. They also have heal in combat to a large degree, just like the Holy Reckoning Paladin does. But they also, and they don't really benefit, but they like resist gear, but they don't really benefit from resist gear. It just means that the Ret Reckoning Paladin usually ends up having a playstyle middle ground between the two extremes of the Holy Reckoning Paladin and the Ret Reckoning Paladin. And if we take it a step further, Deep Ret Paladin also has all the mana war options that Holy Paladin does, making them like the hybrid of all of these three paladins' very distinct combat tactics. They can do it all, and so it's just kind of like pick your poison. You can do everything the Ret Reckoning Paladin likes to do, but you can also do everything the Holy Reckoning Paladin likes to do, and you can do all of it in the same duel, which gets kind of interesting and weird. But let's play out this hypothetical really fast. Make sure we're still recording here. We'll play out this hypothetical really fast. As a refresher, the hypothetical is Paladin unkillable. Every time we touch the mage, there's a 10% chance that the mage just dies. Okay? All right, so we're going to play out this hypothetical. The first thing you want to do as a paladin is you want to, and this is assuming you have, this is going to look different for if you're wearing the resistance suits or if you're not wearing a resist suit and relying on your healing to survive. But I'm gonna walk you through it with the healing, and just know that it looks almost identical when you're wearing a resistance suit. Because the resistance suit, basically you just take so little damage that your healing still becomes viable. You use the exact same tactics is what I'm trying to say. It's just that you might not end up having to heal because you're in a resistance suit. All right, so the first thing you do is you cast Blessing of Freedom on yourself. All of these paladins, to my knowledge, have the improved Blessing of Freedom. So the Blessing of Freedom lasts 16 seconds. Not super important that it lasts 16 seconds. If you don't have it upgraded, it's not that big of a deal. Just wait and see. So we cast Blessing of Freedom on ourselves, and then we immediately go for a Holy Light. Now, usually what's happening during this time is the mage is at range and casting a Frostbolt on us. All right, simple, easy peasy, lemon squeezy. That doesn't look right. I'll bring it down a little bit. My eyes are weird. All right, so usually what'll happen is the mage will finish the Frostbolt. The Frostbolt will be in the air coming at us, right? Something like this. And we're almost done finishing our Holy Light, and that's when the mage will counterspell us. Okay, I've talked about what a mage burst looked like many, many times, especially in my HP Breakpoint videos. But I've never actually shown you guys what the hell the sequence looks like in painful, dragging you guys, kicking and screaming through the sequence in painful detail. All right, out will come Counterspell. Keep in mind, Counterspell has a 30-second cooldown, so that 30-second cooldown starts now. This Counterspell will completely negate our Holy Light, so back up there. I'm gonna actually, yeah. But our freedom is still, like, operational and all things going on. So they counterspell us. It locks our School of Magic for 10 seconds. And, of course, we get hit by this damn Frostbolt, right? This Frostbolt is going to hit us. I'm going to drag down Fire Blast, and we're just going to count how many Fire Blasts and Frostbolts hit us under these circumstances for a second, because currently the mage is probably around about 30 yards away from us, right? We'll assume this is a 30-yard distance. We've just taken one Frostbolt spell. We get to look at the RNG, all that stuff, blah, 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 blah. Well, while we have freedom on and we're counterspelled, what do we do as the paladin? The answer is we run the fuck away. We just run away in a straight line, and we force this mage to chase us in a straight line. While we're running away and they're running away, this mage cannot get a Frostbolt off. Like, he can't hit us with a second Frostbolt. What this is going to cause is it's going to mean that the mage is going to have to blink to catch up to this. So now we're simulating a blink, so he's closer, right? And about 1.5 seconds after this, he'll Fire Blast you. So we got about like 7 seconds left on our counter spell here. We're still running away in a straight line, yada, yada, yada. We've taken one Frostbolt and we've taken one Fire Blast. Now, usually what'll happen is, because Fire Blast only has a range of 20 yards, is the mage will continue running after you, and you'll continue running away in a straight line. And the mage will wait like the 8 seconds or so that it takes them to get off like another Fire Blast kind of a scenario. So now you've taken one Frostbolt and 2 Fire Blasts. Then the mage will root themselves in place and go for the second Frostbolt. All right? But it's important to realize that your counterspell is now gone. Now, what are the other options? He could blink forward, Fire Blast, and then go into another Frostbolt, right? But you're still running away in a straight line. He has to root himself for 2 seconds to get off that Frostbolt, which means now he won't get off that second Fire Blast, and you just continue running until you get are able to Holy Light yourself. What'll happen in that scenario is it goes blink. It goes. You take. What I'm saying is he'll catch up to you while you've taken 2 Frostbolts and 1 Fire Blast in that scenario. He'll eventually catch up to you while you're still trying to get off your Holy Light, and then he'll get the second Fire Blast into you. So no matter what way the mage plays this, you're going to be taking 2 Frostbolts and 2 Fire Blasts before you're able to get a Holy Light into yourself. All right? All roads lead to Rome here. It's always 2 frost bolts, 2 fire blasts. Hopefully that makes any sense. That makes sense to you. So basically, our counterspell has fallen off at this point. God damn it, go away. Our counterspell has fallen off at this point, right? We're going for the Holy Light. Go fuck off. We're going for the Holy Light. Freedom is probably still on us. Let's be perfectly honest, but let's just assume it's probably still on us. Like at 16 seconds, it's definitely still there. And the mage will be at, insert. It varies what range the mage is at now. But you're either getting hit with the second Fire Blast, or you're about to get hit with the second Frostbolt, and then boom, the Holy Light will start healing you. Which means that when it comes to surviving Mage Burst, we basically only have to survive times x2. We only have to survive times 2 Frostbolt times 2 Fire Blast. Control C, no. Control Y, Control V, drag it on over. Okay, that's it. You just have to survive these 2 things. Okay, are we clear? Are we cool on this? And now so it's important to realize that at this juncture, one sec here, let's drag this away. So basically, you do like 2 Holy Lights. Basically, you just spam Holy Light into yourself until your full life. The mage may or may not be doing things, like he might be running up closer to you and like Cone of Colding you, or like usually just sit themselves in place and they start casting Frostbolts until your full life. Your freedom has fallen off. One second, let me pause the video. All right, we are back. All right, so if you're following the timeline of these events, anyways, what I'm trying to describe is you're going to heal to full, and when you're done healing to full, you're going to turn around and you're going to start running after this mage. And while you're running after the mage, of course, is going to be running away from you. Like simple, easy peasy, lemon squeezy, right? Why is the mage running away from you? Well, if you follow the timeline, there's like 10 seconds or so left to go on his counterspell. His ice block, not ice block, his blink has probably 4 or 5 seconds, something like that, to go before he can use it again, right? He can't really turn around and go for a sheep. Mages get pretty good at the distance, but this mage had to blink and get really close to you, if you recall. This is also why it's much better if they do the blink, Fire Blast, wait 8 seconds, Fire Blast, and then go into Frostbolt. Because if they do if they do it the other way, they'll be 20 yards away from you when you can potentially start running at them. But if they do like the Frostbolt last and then start spamming Frostbolt, they'll be like 30 yards away from you, or however long it took you to stop. Basically, they're still going to be about 20 yards away from you. You wouldn't want them that close. The distance between you and the mage becomes important here, because they need to get enough distance in order to be able to turn around and sheep you before you touch them in melee. Because again, if you touch them in melee, there's a 10% chance that they just die, right? Oh, that reminds me. I actually need to go get the Hammer of Wrath icon. One second. Let me pause the video. All right, we got it. We're good. All right, so here's now the scenario, right? The mage has to wait until he has enough distance that he can sheep you, and basically the mage has 2 options. They can turn, once they get enough distance, they can turn, they either need to get enough distance, but this is the bad mage scenario, right? The mage who doesn't know what he's doing. The mage who got too close to you during this whole sequence, who doesn't have enough distance that he can actually turn around and sheep you, he has to wait for blink, and then he has to blink away and then turn around and start sheeping you, right? Which he's going to get off 100% of the time, like no big problem, but it's going to cost him a lot of mana. You also have closing options on him because he already blinked. So, like, you can grenade him and then run up and hit him, which is going to force out an ice block. I'm trying to show you that we're going to start forcing out ice blocks with our 10% chance to kill them. All right? And there's a bunch of different scenarios. The bad mage scenario is they have to blink away, you grenade them while they're sheeping you, you walk up to them, you force out an ice block. Right? Simple. But let's talk about the good mage scenario. So the good mage scenario is Frostbolt, Counterspell, Blink, Fire Blast, wait, Fire Blast, Frostbolt, oh shit, this mage paladin's running at me, let's run away. Right, so that's going to be a mage that is significantly farther away from you. He has plenty of time to go for a sheep. He has Blink up and all that stuff. Things get very interesting from here. Because let's say you grenade stun him or you goblin mortar him while he's going for the sheep. He still has blink. Damn it, give me this already. He can easily blink out of it because he spent the time running away from you, kind of a scenario. He can easily blink out of it. But usually when they're facing you and they're going for sheep, they're only going to blink in one direction. And that direction is going to be towards you, right? And even though they blinked out of a stun, so the stun's on a 50% DR, the sheer act of them blinking towards you means that you get to Hammer of Justice stun them rather than the sheep going off. I actually want to keep that sheep. And then, of course, this will force out the ice block. All roads lead to Rome on this one. And Rome, of course, is that they're forced to IB here. Okay? It's IB or die. Like, this is the first IB or die, or it's more like IB or risk 10% chance of dying type scenario. So, a lot of times, and here's by far the more common scenario. Jesus. There's so many variants of this. So there's the more common scenario is mage is 30 yards away from you. You're running at them. They stop to go for a sheep. They're going to get the sheep off on you before you get into melee range of them to hit them. But they're not going to get the sheep off on you before you get within the 10 yards to Hammer of Justice stun them. So you end up running up to them while they're casting sheep. You Hammer of Justice stun them. They blink away 20 yards. You catch them with some other stun, or they just don't have enough distance on you. So now comes the grenade. The grenade's only half duration, so only lasts 1.5 seconds, but it's more than enough for you to get on top of them after the blink, so they're forced to ice block. All roads lead to Rome here, and that usually is you had to use Justice and you had to use grenade, but you're forcing out an ice block. Okay? Or you had to use Justice and you had to use Tidal Charm, Goblin Mortar, something like that, but you're forcing out an ice block. Okay? So just know that this sequence of events always is mage tried to burst you and kill you. He failed. You healed the full. Because he failed and you're running at him, you're going to force out an ice block, or he's going to have to risk a 10% chance or more that he dies. Okay? Are we cool with this? So out comes an ice block, blah, 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 blah. He'll survive with plenty of time. He'll just blink away. And now he's 100% going to get this sheep off. All right, cool. So we're in a sheep. So now we're in a sheep. The mage eats and drinks and basically just resets the fight. And this entire sequence of events starts over again. All right? Because what's he going to do when he's done eating and drinking? He's going to frostbolt you. Right? So we're and that when that frostbolt hits you, you're going to get out of the sheep. What do you do as the paladin when that frostbolt hits you and you get out of the sheep? Do you immediately cast freedom and go for a holy light that he's going to finish his next frostbolt and then counterspell you? And we know what's going to happen. We're going to run away in a straight line with our freedom on, and we're going to eat 2 fire blasts and another frostbolt. Well, that's a bad line of play because we've eaten 3 fucking frostbolts. His burst now consists of 3 frostbolts and 2 fire blasts before we can get another heal in. That's a terrible plan. What you do instead is he completes this frostbolt. Rather than going for a heal, you start running away in a straight line. You freedom yourself. You keep running away in a straight line. He won't be able to finish his second frostbolt. Once you're out of range of his frostbolt, then you go for the heal, and you can see the sequence starting up all over again. That'll be the sequence where, yeah, he's going to counterspell you, but it's going to be 2 frostbolts and 2 fire blasts is what you have to survive. So immediately upon getting hit by the frostbolt, which knocks you out of the sheep, you start running away in a straight fucking line. If the mage tries to counter this by being closer than you than normal, rather than running away, you end up running at him. Your Hammer of Justice is on cooldown. He doesn't want anything to do with that fucking thing. That's going to cause him to need to stop his Frostbolt and run away from you. And you end up in a completely different scenario where you basically screwed over his burst and he needs to sheep you again. This is why it always plays out that they're going to be around about 30 yards away from you. They're going to get you out of the sheep with a Frostbolt, and then you freedom yourself and you run away in the opposite direction, and the whole scenario starts up all over again. So this is the whole burst, a threaten to kill the mage, get sheeped cycle. Like, this is the cycle that the entire matchup revolves around. Okay, and that is mage tries to burst you with a counterspell. You survive their nonsense. You turn around. You start running at them. You have to use gadgets and gizmos and all that stuff to be able to stop them from just sheeping you easily, forcing out ice blocks and stuff like that. Okay. Other things you get to use to force out ice blocks is, let's say you're running at them, and rather than Hammer of Justice stunning them, let's get this out of here. So you're running at the mage, and rather of Hammer of, they're going for a sheep. All right, let's get the sheep down here. So we've survived the burst, and we're running at the mage. They're trying to sheep you. Other options are you eat the sheep, and then you PvP trinket the sheep, and you keep running at them. Now you are so close to them, so rather than having to use, let's say, grenade, or like we didn't Hammer of Justice stun them in this scenario, we didn't need to use grenade or anything. The mage still has blink, for example. So rather than using Hammer of Justice, instead what you do is you PvP trinket, and the next thing you know, they either have to ice block or die, or they have to blink away. When they blink away, then you use Tidal Charm, then you use Goblin Mortar, then you use Grenade. Keep in mind, people, that a mage reset on you in order to burst you takes about a minute. Okay? It takes them about a minute, this whole sequence takes a minute of time. All right, 1 minute of combat time. You usually sit in a sheep for about 40 seconds, 30 to 40 seconds as a paladin, which means by the time he's trying to sheep you again, grenade is coming off of cooldown. So you can just keep this cycle up over and over again just off of grenade alone. And because they have to kind of keep their distance from you at all times, Hammer of Justice and Grenade alone can start forcing out these ice blocks. Hopefully I'm making any sense with that. What I'm trying to say here is if you run at them like a complete moron, and you have, let's say, 20 seconds left to go on your grenade cooldown, and you're going to run into a sheep without them being able to do anything without you being able to do anything about it. So that scenario will be, oh, my grenade's still on cooldown. I run at the mage. He tries to sheep me. I don't get there in time, so I throw my Hammer of Justice. The mage blinks away, turns around, re-sheeps me again. Oh, look, now my grenade is coming off of cooldown in like 2 seconds, but I'm a fucking sheep. Instead, what you do is you let them get distance away from you, and you just run away in the opposite direction a little bit. The mage might be like, all right, whatever, I'll take the time to eat and drink. But when you start running at them at the 30-yard range mark again, at least this time you're going to have grenade up for this sequence of events. So they'll try to go for a sheep. You'll either get the Hammer of Justice on them or you'll grenade them. You'll grenade them, they'll blink, you'll Hammer of Justice them. There's that ice block that they need to do again. Then they have to wait for to come out of that again. You see where we're going with this, right? Don't be an idiot and just run at the mage when you know for a fact that your grenade is not going to be there in this. You need the grenade in this sequence. It's on a minute cooldown. Use it. Okay? If you just run at them immediately, you're going to find that you missed the grenade cooldown by like 5 seconds, and you didn't force out an ice block. All right? We cool on this? Other things that force out ice blocks, of course, is just bubble. Like if he's going for a sheep, you don't even Hodge of Justice him. You get sheep, you bubble, you keep running at him. He goes, oh shit, he blinks away. Then you catch him with grenade. That's another ice block, or suffer the 10% chance that we killed the mage scenario. Bubble doesn't give a crap. Yeah, you're gonna grenade him, catch up to him. You still have a Hodge stun that's gonna stun him for 4 seconds. But when you have bubble, and you use it offensively versus a mage, that is a true, honest to God, this is important to realize. That is a true, honest to God, ice block or die scenario. Because when you physically get on top of the mage, so again, he tries to sheep you. All right, let's just play it out. We're going to do the bubble offensively. So he tries to sheep you. He successfully sheeps you, but you bubble it away, and you keep running at him. The mage goes, oh shit, and he blinks away. He usually blinks this direction, but he might blink farther that direction. This is a dueling scenario, so he's not going to blink directly away, but he'll blink like over here. So now the mage is like, 15, 20 yards away from you, something like that. You turn around and you start chasing him again. All you need is a grenade to catch him, right? Grenade, Tidal Charm, Goblin Mortar, all that stuff. That's all you need to do in order to catch him. And he's in an ice block or die scenario. Because let's say you grenade him and you get up to him, your Hammer of Justice stun is on a 50% DR, but it's still a 3 fucking second stun. Good. Only Holy Shock Paladins are not going to be able to delete a mage. Your 10% chance to kill them when you touch them under these PvP circumstances, because you get an extra 3 seconds of stun on them, skyrockets to like a 30% chance that they die if we touch them in this scenario. So bubble is by far your most powerful tool if they do not have ice block, to get them in a scenario where they have to ice block or die. Okay, hopefully that makes sense, because we use grenade to catch him, but we're getting an extra 3 seconds of stun on the guy. This scenario becomes even more terrifying for the mage, like lethal, okay, for the mage, if we used Goblin Mortar to catch them. Now roll with me on this, all right? There is an engineering item, a grenade, that is called the Big One. All right, it's a little expensive to make. It's not that expensive to make, but it's a little expensive to make. And there are only a handful of scenarios where we actually use the Big One over, say, like a thorium grenade or an iron grenade. This is one of them. All right, so if I was a million years away and I need to catch him, I have to use a grenade or something to catch him. And instead I use Goblin Mortar to catch him, right? Okay, cool. We stunned him. Yeah, so we bubbled the sheep. We're still running at him. He blinked. Now we're using Goblin Mortar to catch him. Let's say he's in a scenario where he doesn't have any ice blocks. Like, I'm trying to explain just how horrifyingly lethal this is. He's stunned for 3 seconds. I need about 1.5 seconds to make it over there. I move at 8 yards a second, about 8.6 yards per second. I'm going to get on top of this guy, no problem, inside of that 3 second stun. I'm physically in combat with him. He's still stunned. I wreck bomb him. I start beating him in melee. Let's say I'm a holy paladin, like I'm holy shocking him. I'm using my crit heal, holy shock, blah, 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 blah. I'm going to town on him, right? No problem. Okay, so he comes out of that stun. What the fuck is he going to do with his life? All he can do is go for a sheep. He doesn't have blink. He doesn't have ice block. He's got nothing. Maybe what he can do is he can recast his 500 HP bubble shield for 1.5 second GCD and then try to go for a sheep on you, right? It's not looking good, is what I'm saying. But let's say we don't want him to even do anything whatsoever. We don't want to give him even the hope of being able to do anything. We just throw our Hodge stun immediately. So now he's stunned for another 3 seconds. Okay, cool. Well, the big one is a bomb. We haven't used our grenade yet. We use Goblin Mortar to catch this guy. The big one is a bomb that you have to root yourself in place and charge it up for 3 seconds. And then when it finally goes off, it stuns the target for 5 seconds. Okay? Which sounds stupid because now we're on a DR of 25%. So now our stuns only last, they don't last 50% as long, they last 25% as long. But that still means that after, imagine you have a two-handed weapon, right? So we bitch slapped him with one two-handed weapon. Then we Hammer of Justice stunned him. There's going, and then we we start charging up. We either hit him with a two-handed weapon again, or we start charging up the big one bomb just in his face and say screw it. Because when this big one bomb completes, we're gonna get another two-handed weapon proc. Maybe we swap to a one-handed sword and board, and we get the ancient Grimoire, the skeleton summon thing going. So now we're not losing any DPS like at all. In this scenario, you can also swap to a faster two-handed weapon like Kalmandor's Revenge, which syncs up with this scenario super well. What's about to happen is he ate a 3-second stun. Now he's eating a 3-second. He ate a 3-second Goblin Mortar stun. This is off a bubble, by the way. Now he's about to eat a 3-second Hodge stun, and when the big one finally hits him, it's going to be 5% at 25%. So all I need to do is like 5 times 0.25. He's about to eat another 1.25 seconds of stun, and if somehow he's still alive after all of this, now he finally gets to do something. What can he do? Well, he might be able to put up. He can take 3 seconds to put up the 500 point HP shield and to try to get a sheep on you, but that's going to be more auto attacks that are coming down on him. Not to mention, you probably auto attacked him with a two-handed weapon, and then you got a Hammer of Wrath into him. Like, how many Hammer of Wraths have we gotten into this guy at this point? He may or may not. He may or may not have Counterspell up. I'm trying to showcase just how deadly things get when it was bubble rather than a stun that you use to counter the sheep and then threaten to kill them in melee, which is forcing them to blink and do all this stuff, right? So when you have bubble and you use it offensively, you are 110,000% in an ice block or die scenario for the mage. And the reason why this becomes important is I want you to observe what happens in our hypothetical scenario if the mage runs out of ice blocks. And I want you to realize at what point he's going to start running out of ice blocks. So it's like, yeah, he tries to kill you. He failed to kill you. You ran at him. You had to use stun. You had to use Hammer of Justice. You had to use grenade. But you put him in an ice block or suffer a 10% chance to die scenario. Let's say he does ice block. What now? Well, it just keeps repeating. It's like the song that never ends. It goes on and on, my friends. Some people started sheeping us, not knowing what it would do. You get where we're going with this, right? So they just sheep you, but your grenade cooldown, your Hammer of Justice. You don't even need PvP trinkets or any kind of trinket whatsoever, and you're just forcing out ice blocks over and over again. You're unkillable. Okay, what happens when he runs out of the ice blocks? Well, what happens when he runs out of the ice blocks is now he has to suffer this 10% chance every minute, because he has to sheep you, recover his mana, and then initiate the kill again. This is on about a minute-long cycle, especially when their mana gets low. And your grenade is up again, and this is a song that never ends. All right, which means now that he doesn't have ice blocks, he has to suffer this melee hit, which has a percent chance to kill him. Okay, and this cycle will go on and on until you as the paladin run out of mana and die. All right, but then you begin to realize that with the Book of the Dead skeleton summons, so that when you summon a skeleton on the mage, it becomes very difficult. The skeleton will keep the mage in combat, but it won't put you in combat, which means that if you run away in a completely different direction, or you use any other kind of PvP trinket, or this is when we get into the whole gear swapping thing, where you can swap during this whole thing, it becomes very difficult. You can use the skeleton summons not to win a mana war with the mage, but to instead recover and replenish your own mana bar. That's what I'm trying to say. You might have to use the skeleton summon in conjunction with some other PvP trinkets, and items like Tidal Charm or Gnomish Netomatic, like the mage blinks and you just Gnomish Netomatic them. They're stuck there because they don't have any ice blocks anymore, right? And the skeleton pet will keep them in combat while you just run away for a few seconds and then eat and drink, okay? So in a lot of cases, you don't use the skeletons offensively. You use them defensively to regenerate your mana. Oh, geez. 1 second. Let me pause the video again. All right, we are back. Okay, so this is where it becomes very important to realize all the gear swapping opportunities you have as the paladin in this sequence of events. Okay. Um, Now, the mage also exists in a world where they can gear swap pretty much whenever the hell they want to, practically. However, it's important to realize that in this sequence of events, in our every man paladin any build hypothetical, that we also have 1,000,001 times. Basically, every cycle of this song that never ends, um, every sheep cycle, basically. Every burst into sheep's burst into threatening ice block, into sheep cycle, into burst, into threatening, surviving the burst, threatening the ice block, sheep, threatening that whole cycle. Every time we play out that cycle with the mage, there's actually 2 gear swapping opportunities every single time. I'm going to show you where they are. So it has to do with Fire Blast. Fire Blast is on an 8-second cooldown. They have to put 8 fucking talent points, basically waste 8 fucking talent points. Only fire mages will have this. Fire and Palm Pyro, but Palm Pyro is a variant of Fire Mage. 8 talent points in their skill tree to reduce the cooldown of Fire Blast by 1.5 seconds. It has an 8-second cooldown, which means it would be a 6.5 second cooldown Fire Blast you're dealing with if they invested 8 talent points into the fire tree. Okay? Which only Palm Pyro and Fire Mages specifically will be doing anything like that. You only need, as the Paladin, 6 seconds out of combat before you can gear swap. And their Fire Blast is on a 6.5 second cooldown at best, the vast majority of the time in this scenario, because this guy has Ice Block and presumably Cold Snap. Their Fire Blast is on an 8-second cooldown. Why is that important? Well, if you're running away in a straight line, okay, let's take that scenario where you're running away in a straight line, you're counterspelled, okay? And the mage he's completed the Frostbolt, he's run after you a little bit, he's blinked to get closer, then he Fire Blasts you, then he waits for the second Fire Blast, and then he casts his Frostbolt. Like, that's the sequence. He's casting this Frostbolt while you're going for the Holy Light, right? Well, you notice there was this, I blink, I Fire Blast you, I run after you, I wait the 8 fucking seconds before I can Fire Blast you again. There was a 2-second window there that you could gear swap into whatever the fuck you wanted as the Paladin. Anything you want. His only other option is to, like, stop for, like, about a second and try to get a wand off on you by chasing you. But that's damn near 8 yards. That's going to be really hard to do. He might be out of Fire Blast range. That completely ruins his burst cycle and sequence. All right? So you have the option of gear swapping into your PvP trinkets, into more resist gear, less resist gear, in and out of a resist suit, whatever you want. That's your first gear swapping opportunity, is with these double Fire Blasts. And if you recall, we already talked about why it isn't the case that they blink, Fire Blast you, then go for another Frostbolt, because you'll be getting distance on them. They'll get the second Frostbolt off, but they won't get the third, and now they're out of Fire Blast range, and they already use it. Screws over their burst, right? Their burst, rather than it being 2 Frostbolts and 2 Fire Blasts, their burst is now 2 Frostbolts and 1 Fire Blast. And you still have a gear swapping opportunity, so it's like, what the fuck? All right, so that's your first gear swapping opportunity. Your second gear swapping opportunity was when you've healed the full, and now you're running at the mage, and the mage is running away from you, trying to get distance and waiting for cooldowns. Specifically, he's waiting for his blink cooldown so that he's okay to stop, try to get the sheep off on you, and then when that happens, he can blink away, that kind of a thing, right? Or he can blink away to get even more distance and then turn around and sheep you even more comfortably. At that point, you'd have to grenade him to catch him, that type of scenario. And then you'd have to also use Hammer of Justice when you got over to him, and he still has to ice block. All roads lead to Rome. He has to ice block or suffer, insert your % chance to delete them out of existence upon making contact with them, right? All roads lead to Rome here. All roads lead to Rome here. No matter what he does, this is the sequence. All right, cool. But you'll notice when you're doing this run away thing, he can't stop. He can't slow down. He can't get a wand off. It's the exact same thing in reverse, except you're chasing him, which means that when you see the fire blast come out of him while you're running after his dumbass, all he's doing that for is to try to keep you in combat. 9 times out of 10, they won't even fire blast you, which means you have this massive gear swapping opportunity while you're chasing after him. When you stun him and he blinks away, there's another gear swapping opportunity there because you could just run in the opposite direction. You could just keep running in that direction. Fire blast is only a 20-yard range, so you keep running and you gear swap, which means you can do weird things as a paladin, such as you could have been in a resist suit over here, and survived his offense. Let's say you're a Reckoning Paladin, you had to sit in a resist suit to survive his offense. When you start running at him, you can actually, if you have gear swapping opportunity, you can swap into your DPS gear and keep chasing him. And then when you finally catch him and he blinks away, you just run away in the opposite direction until you get back into your resist suit. That is a perfectly viable line of play, right? So even then, you can. The only problem with that scenario, of course, is you didn't actually threaten out. You didn't get an ice block out of that scenario, right? But at least you're in a scenario where you're threatening him. You're threatening to stun him and catch him and get out an ice block kind of a thing. It's a little bit risky. Basically, if you get caught not having a resist suit as a Reckoning Paladin and you're in a sheep, you're dead because you're just not going to survive that burst without bubble or some major cooldowns. So some very interesting things with this gear swapping opportunity. That you can do as a Reckoning Paladin, but as a Reckoning Paladin, you're going to be pulling out more of the other trinkets, so you're going to be using Goblin Rocket Helm and all that other stuff to force out the ice blocks, and then, but again, through this whole sequence of events, very easy for you to get these gear swaps, very easy for you to kill them. Okay, why is the gear swapping opportunities important? Well, because if you haven't noticed in our hypothetical scenario, if the mage cannot ice block, he fucking dies. All right? If he can't ice block, he's risking death. And there's not a goddamn thing he can do about it. And if we start using PvP trinkets that make this situation even worse for the mage, then things get worse for them, right? Now they really have to ice block or die, meaning the 10% kill chance escalates into like a 30% chance to die because now we're throwing PvP trinkets into the mix. Not PvP trinkets, we're throwing trinkets in general into the mix, not worrying about their cooldowns or anything, because we know we have all this gear swapping opportunity. We're just going to cycle through like 4 or 5 trinkets and make it so that's not a 10% chance the mage dies when we make connection. It's more like a 30% chance the mage dies when it makes connection. This gets even worse when you realize just how deadly we were off of bubble alone, right? So you end up using the PvP trinkets and saving bubble. You primarily save bubble in case the mage gets really good RNG on their burst. Because if the mage gets like super good RNG on the burst, the only thing that will save us as a paladin is our bubble. But so we end up holding bubble in reserve and using a bunch of different PvP trinkets and items, hoping that we don't have to use bubble at any point in time during this whole burst sequence defensively, saving it for when they don't have any ice blocks left and we can use bubble offensively. Because if we can use bubble offensively and they don't have any ice blocks, they are super dead. Super duperty dead. At that point, even a fucking Holy Shock Paladin has the capability of killing a mage under those circumstances. It looks different because you didn't, you stopped the sheep by, say, you Goblin Mortared the sheep, then the mage blinks and you start running after. It looks a little different in sequence, if that makes any sense. But in our hypothetical here, we're limiting ourselves a little bit more. Now, I want you to notice the cooldown on the ice blocks and the cooldown on Cold Snap. All right? A duel can last up to 10 minutes under these conditions that we're describing here. We're going through the song that never ends, or the sheep burst cycle that never ends. The duel flag only lasts 10 minutes. That's why I bring up the term 10 minutes. So if a duel lasts longer than 10 minutes, the duel just automatically ends in a draw, kind of a scenario. We already talked about how we're not going to run out of mana with our skeleton summoning shenanigans. That's not really going to be an issue. We have plenty of gear swapping opportunities. There's plenty of gear that we can swap into, like MP5 gear. We can go into resistance suits. There's a major recombobulator ray, which will give you back mana. There's all kinds of things that'll give you back mana. Mages are running on fumes past once they do this cycle a couple of times. They really desperately they start having mana problems in trying to kill you, which means MP5 becomes a thing. So you're not running out of mana. So which means this duel is going to go to the 10-minute mark. All right? In our hypothetical, it's definitely going to go to the 10-minute mark because we just automatically said, hey, what if we're unkillable? Right? I'm just explaining why we don't run out of mana and die. I'm explaining why we don't just die in general. If they get good RNG lays, we got all kinds of things. Like we got, if it's a serious duel, you won't have Whipper Root, but you'll have Major Recombobulator, a Trinket. You'll have resistance trinkets. There's plenty of time and like you can see the RNG lay on the first Frostbolt and the first Fire Blast, and then there's a gear swapping opportunity, right? If both of these crit, you could just snap your fingers and get into a resist suit. Who gives a fuck? If you're following me on this, right? You're just like, oh, he's already got it set up for a good RNG lay. Okay, whatever. I'll just get into my resist suit for this one. It's not a big deal. You'll notice that during a 10-minute duel, the mage is going to have precisely 3 ice blocks. You, as the paladin, are going to have precisely 2 bubbles and 2 more than 2, like a bunch of, I think PvP trinkets on a 5-minute cooldown. I can't remember if it's on a 3-minute or a 5-minute cooldown. And 2 PvP trinkets. What this means is you can use, even if you had nothing else going on whatsoever as a paladin, you can use Bubble to get out the first ice block. You can use PvP trinket to get out the second ice block. You can use, actually it would be PvP trinket for the first ice block, then Bubble for the second ice block, and then PvP trinket again for the third and final ice block. And oh look, we're at like the 7-minute dueling mark, and I now have Bubble back up, and the mage has no ice block. What the fuck do you think is about to happen in this PvP cycle? This mage is all kinds of fucking dead, and that's without using any kind of anything else on the table. Right? No Rocket Helm, no Goblin Mortar, no Tidal Charm, no Gnomish Cloaking Device, no Gnomish Mind Control Cap, no Rocket, none of the other stuff that we've already established that we can gear swap in and out of at will. Right? And just off of being unkillable and having a 10% chance to kill this mage when we touch them, by the time we hit the 7-minute mark in this duel, we are going to have, they're going to have no ice blocks, and we're going to have Bubble back up and ready to go. How much do you want to bet this mage is all kinds of fucking dead? All right, we clear on this? Okay, cool. So hopefully you can understand why the sequence of events is the way that it is, why I'm talking about gear swapping opportunities, gear swapping into this and that, using those gear swaps to force out the ice blocks, going back into a more defensive build, and basically eventually as time wears on in this duel, come the 7-minute mark, if nothing else has been going for you, or if you've just been like, full on retard screwing it up, to this point, it's not going to matter because you're going to have Bubble, and as long as you know how to use Bubble offensively when they don't have ice blocks, homie is all kinds of fucking dead, done, and dusted. All right? Are we cool with this? All right, sweet. Now we're going to look at the matchups specifically. All right? I'm going to save Holy Shock for last because it's by far the hardest matchup to talk about because all these other classes can have, whatever. It's the hardest to talk about. It's the hardest to talk about because Holy Shock Paladins don't do enough damage to threaten the bubbles, the ice blocks, the vast majority of the time. So what ends up happening is the mage, rather than forcing the mages in a scenario where he has to ice block or risk death, they just take it on the chin and are be like, they say to the Holy Shock Paladin, I don't think you have enough damage. I guess I am talking about Holy Paladin now. They just say, I know you don't have enough damage to force out an ice block, so I'm just going to sheep you in your face no matter what you do. At that point, they won't even blink away from you and waste the mana. They'll probably just eat your... they might blink out of the 6-second stun, but they won't blink out of the grenade stun. They'll just stand there, laugh at you, and get you in a sheep and go on about their business. Holy Shock Paladins deal with mages in one of two ways. A lot of times they'll just get into a resist suit and laugh at the mage being unable to kill them. They're like, ha ha ha, I'm using pally time tactics. I just freedom myself. And then I run away when I'm counterspelled and I'm in a resist suit. So I have Holy Shock. Good fucking luck killing me. They basically just say, I play for the draw. I accept the draw. So be it. The reason why this is the way Holy Shock Paladins go is because in PvP, Holy Shock Paladins can kill any other class in the game with the sole exception of Mage. And against Mage, it's very hard to kill a Mage, but it's very easy for the Holy Shock Paladin to play for a draw. And so they just play for a draw. They're just like, whatever, draw. So like, I can kill every other class in the entire game except Mage, and against Mages, I just accept the draw. And that's usually their mentality. It's important to realize, however, that even as a Holy Shock Paladin, if the Mage fucks up in their mana, or there is a sequence of events that you can use as the Holy Shock Paladin, theoretically, where you beat the mage in a mana war using both skeleton summons back to back, right? Because if you realize that it costs a mage something stupid like 500 mana to blink, it's costing them something stupid like 500 mana to sheep you, and all that stuff, and you begin to realize that bubble being used offensively is by far, when the mage doesn't have any ice blocks, is by far your best kill opportunity as even a Holy Shock. Like it's best for all paladins, but it's kind of your only, as a Holy Shock Paladin, there's only two ways you kill a mage. The first one is you won a mana war. They're just super fucking They don't even have the 450-ish mana to sheep you, and you're physically on top of them, beating them into the dirt. And even when they finally do get around to sheeping you, that's when they start suffering pushback issues, Hammer of Wrath, blah, 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 blah. All right, that's another thing we have to talk about. But I guess I'll talk about that when I get to Holy Reckoning Paladin. Oh, good. We're almost at the hour-long mark. So the first way that the mage loses to a Holy Shock Paladin is they lose a mana war. And they didn't realize that they needed an absolute ocean. And they usually will lose the mana war back-to-back skeleton summon when their super low mana will kill them. Just because they can't really do anything about it. If a mage ever falls to 20% mana bar, and you have the ability to skeleton summon on them, a Holy Shock Paladin can easily kill a mage from there. Or at a bare minimum, he'll start forcing out all the ice blocks that he couldn't force out before. And the next thing, when he's out of ice blocks, using bubble offensively is your next best kill window. But I'd also point out that back-to-back skeleton summons is going to eat up something stupid like 2 minutes of time. There's a really, really good possibility that when the mage finally gets out of or survives these, uses all of his ice blocks to survive the back-to-back skeleton summons, and then he finally gets the opportunity to sheep you, and then he finally gets to go and eat and drink. Bubble is coming off of cooldown within moments. PvP trinket is probably the trinket that you have equipped and ready to rock. So you just PvP trinket out of the sheep while the mage is still low life and low mana. And then you start running at him, and then you'll find that you're in that sequence of events where you still have bubble, and you can give them the business from there, and then they die. So if you kill a mage as a Holy Shock Paladin, it is 100% of the time going to be off of back-to-back skeleton summons. So if you find yourself in like a serious dueling tournament, and for some reason you need to kill a mage, you probably need to pull out you need to do everything to try to get out the ice blocks, but your real true kill sequence is going to be mage is low mana, here have a skeleton summon, here have another skeleton summon, oh by the way, my PvP trinket is off of cooldown, I have some other trinket like Goblin Mortar ready to rock and roll, and oh by the way, my bubble is coming back off of cooldown in like 2 seconds. No mage is surviving that shit. They are all kinds of dead. All right, so that's what it looks like from the Holy Shock's perspective. And there's also all these gear swapping opportunities in and out of resist suits as you see fit. That becomes important because you don't want to have to use bubble defensively, yada, yada, yada. Okay, we cool with that? Awesome. Make sure to use your major recombobulator ray at some point in time in the duel. That way you didn't have to use bubble. It gives you almost 500 mana back. Use it, use it, use it. Other things you might want to tinker around with as a Holy Shock Paladin would be Skull of Impending Doom. Skull of Impending Doom does become a thing, but that's another mana war type scenario. So you might go Skeleton Summon into let's just have Skull of Impending Doom so I can remove one of the sheeps. So the mage goes to sheep you activate Skull of Impending Doom, it bounces off, you negate the sheep. The mage goes, oh shit. If it's draining too much mana from you, then you just cancel it immediately. You'll eat the second sheep, but it means that when you PvP trinket that sheep, now you don't even really need to use bubble anymore. It's just like, Jesus Christ, that this mage is up shit creek without a paddle. But you have to be very, very cognizant about why you're using certain trinkets and abilities. You have to have it very well planned out to kill this mage at damn near the 7-minute mark in your duel. Very, very well planned out in order for a Holy Shock Paladin to beat a mage in a high level duel. Okay? Super, and you usually have to pull out all the stops. Completely doable, but it's probably the hardest PvP matchup in existence, and even I do not want to have to sit down and try to figure it the fuck out. So if you're a Holy Shock enthusiast, like Peaceblade or some shit like that, feel free to sit down and figure out, take all the information I'm giving you, sit down and really think about how you're going to give this mage the business, why and where specifically, and how the reason why he's so low mana under these conditions, blah, 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 blah. All right, let me get him a drink of water. So it is doable. It's just super ugly and nasty, and you really have to use the Grimstone books. Best two-hander for a Holy Shock Paladin under these circumstances is Hand of Rag's not bad. Hand of Rag is actually really good under these circumstances just because of the fire resist. But specifically, I would put my money on a Kalmandor Blade for a Holy Shock Paladin if I'm really trying to give them the business. You might have enough spell power that with the Grimstones and stuff, you don't mind using Flurry Axe or the like. Maybe I wouldn't mess around with I was thinking about Mug a Herd or something, and you let the skeleton pet beat the crap out of them. I don't know about that. But if you wanted to get extra damage on them at range, pairing the skeleton pet summons with things that slow the mages, such as Gnomish Netomatic. So you watch the mage blink away from the skeleton summon, you just Gnomish Netomatic them in place. That mage is going to have to ice block, or the skeleton summon is going to beat the absolute living fuck out of his HP bar. It's not, or his mana bar, which is both really bad. So you're just gonna, that's a PvP trinket or not a PvP trinket, a trinket use that basically forces an ice block, or the mage takes a considerable amount of damage. So basically just use stuff like that, because again, you have all these gear swapping opportunities. The other gear swapping opportunity you have is heartbeat duration. So when sheeps break from heartbeat duration, that's always a gear swapping opportunity. That's random though, so you can't really predict that. But if mages are running around trying to avoid getting their asses kicked by skeleton summons, you better believe there's going to be some heartbeat duration risk on their part, because they just can't it's just too mana intensive to let this skeleton get on top of them. So they have to stop, sheep you. Congratulations, the skeleton pet's on top of them. That means they either have to blink away, or they have to hope their frost armor slows them down. Skeleton pet may or may not have freedom on him, which gets kind of nasty. It's disgusting. Either way, as long as that skeleton is alive, they can't eat and drink, which is the biggest problem, right? For them by far. If they try to kill the skeleton pet to rectify the situation, he actually has as much hit points as you do practically, and that's really difficult to do. You have Holy Shock, so you can Holy Shock heal the skeleton. Your healing range is 40 yards. Their sheep range is 30 yards. You get where we're going with this. So you can do all kind. Yeah, it's just bad. As a Holy Shock Paladin, you'll be really familiar with it. All right, let's talk Holy Reckoning. Holy Reckoning is the closest example, like when you gear properly, like in my Holy Reckoning video that I did right before this one. His play style is by far the closest play style to our hypothetical scenario, which our hypothetical scenario was Paladin unkillable. Every time we touch this mage, 10% chance he dies. Okay? Except for the Holy Shock Paladin, for the Holy Reckoning Paladin, it's close because he is a Reckoning Paladin. It's closer to a 20-25% chance that the mage dies, right? And since I already told you that entire sequence of events unto victory, you can see that if you didn't kill the mage before 7 minutes, the mage just dies at 7 minutes because that is the scenario that he exists in. It's also important to note that, and this is also a Holy Shock thing I probably should talk about, in these little exchanges, you actually put a Rec Bomb into the mage, and it's like worst case scenario. You find yourselves a Holy Shock Paladin or a Holy Reckoning Paladin. You find yourself in a scenario where, particularly Holy Reckoning, where you walk up to the mage, you Rec Bomb him. The mage is below 20% life, but he's not below 20% life enough that a single Hammer of Wrath is going to kill him. The mage then starts casting sheep on you, while you as the Holy Reckoning Paladin cast Hammer of Wrath. Hammer of Wrath is a 1 second cast time. Sheep is a 1.5 second cast time. How does this usually work? Well, it usually means that the Wrath will be in the air or the mage gets hit with the Wrath right as you're getting hit with the sheep. So the scenario either is you bomb them, they went, oh shit, they blinked away, they run a little bit, they turn around, they start casting a sheep, you start casting a Wrath on them, the Wrath gets in the air before the sheep hits you, whatever, a Wrath hits them. But they have more than enough HP to survive the Hammer of Wrath, because Hammer of Wrath is only going to do, let me think, it's about 700 damage, which to a mage is about 13-14% of their HP bar. Okay, cool. So the mage can survive one Hammer of Wrath at 3% life. Awesome. What if the Wrath crits? Becomes the question here, right? What if Hammer of Wrath crits? Well, you guys might not know this, but Hammer of Wrath, when it crits, it does ×2 fucking damage. All right, you follow me on this? So usually if, basically when the mage eats that Wrath, as you're taking the sheep, its critical strike chance is equal, the Wrath's critical strike chance is equal to to the win percentage that they had to suffer under that sequence, right? So a lot of times as Holy Reckoning, when you're waiting, the mage can't kill you. You've gotten out the ice blocks already. It's like the 4-minute mark in the duel. You know that your next best chance to kill the mage, or the mage is basically super dead at the 7-minute mark, because that's when your bubble is going to be back up again. But you have 3 minutes to go until your bubble's back up again. Well, you know from the life cycle of the Song That Never Ends, that this means that there's going to be three such encounters between you and the mage, where the mage doesn't have ice block, where the mage is basically just forced to suffer. There's going to be about 2 to 3 encounters there, where the mage just has to eat your melee damage and hope you don't RNG him out of existence, right? Well, under those conditions, he might end up surviving the Rec Bomb, no problem. But then the Hammer of Wrath comes out and crits and deletes him, or the Rec Bomb did so much damage that the Hammer of Wrath, before he can sheep you, just kills him, because again, it does 14% life damage. Or Holy Reckoning just decided to roll a little bit higher than usual and either deleted him outright out of existence, no Hammer of Wrath needed, or dropped his life low enough that the Hammer of Wrath, whether it crits or not, is going to kill the mage. Like that, one of those scenarios. So in a lot of cases, Holy Reckoning will just get the ice blocks out from the mage, and then there's like a 33% chance until they get their third ice block. In the next 2 touches you have with them, that they just die. And then even if they live to the next ice block, they very quickly have to use it. And then congratulations, Bubble is now in play. PvP Trinket is available again. The next thing you know, it doesn't matter if the Wreck Bomb rolls high or rolls low. He dies in the he dies within the time span of the second bubble, basically at about the 7-minute duel mark. So that is life as Holy Reckoning. They can very easily get that build going where they're both unkillable and they don't have to gear swap into resist suits, but they have the option to if they see RNG isn't going their way. And they basically just threaten to they threaten the mage. Ice block or suffer a 30% chance of dying. Ice block or suffer a 30% chance of dying. Oh, you don't have any ice blocks anymore? Okay, we'll just take a 30%, take a 30%. Oh, you're still alive? All right, fine, fuck you. Use your third ice block, you piece of shit. My bubble is going to be up next, and now you super die. Now it's not a 30% chance you die. Now it's like an 80% chance you die. And even if they survive that 80%, they don't have any ice blocks for another 5 minutes. So from there, it's just 30%, 30% until the duel timer runs out at the 10-minute mark. Mage just dies. Somewhat that was 2 30%, 1 80%, and there's going to be another 2 to 3 30% before the duel is over. So at that point, the mage is just lucky to have gotten a draw out of the scenario. So that's why I love that gear, why I think it's very well rounded, blah, 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 blah. The other nice thing about Holy Reckoning is that unlike Holy Shock is like, I kill anybody except a mage and then I struggle with the mage matchup, but I can play for the draw. And then if I get really, really, really stupidly good, I can play for the win using Mana War. By the time you get to Holy Reckoning basically says, I can also kill anybody else in the entire game except mage, but oh, by the way, I can also kill mage. I'm kind of like the best paladin spec in the entire game. Come at me, bro. Right? But then you get to Ret Reckoning and Control Ret, and you begin to realize that Ret Reckoning does what I said in the PvP guide, which is they don't have Ret Reckoning either has the death touch or it has the ability to survive, or they have the ability to make themselves unkillable. They can't have both at the same time. But if Ret Reckoning is able to force out the ice blocks from the mage, while still being able to stay effectively in a resistance suit, eventually the mage will run out of ice blocks, and then the next time the mage, the paladin has the ability to get into his DPS gear, there's a 100% chance the mage dies. You're not touching them with a 30% chance to die. You're touching them with like a 95.8% chance the mage dies, right? And that's where I talk about that's where you're pulling out things like in this sequence of events, you're wearing a resist suit, basically. That's where you're pulling out Gnomish cloaking device plus goblin rocket boots plus I gear swap into my resist gear. So basically, from the mage's perspective, they see a Ret Reckoning paladin in a resist suit suddenly go invisible. They might notice that goblin rocket boots got activated, but they suddenly see the paladin go invisible. But really what happened was the paladin swapped into a DPS gear suit. He has a macro. He swapped into a DPS gear suit. He activated his goblin rocket boots, and he went invisible, all in virtually the same space and time. The mage now has to ice block or suffer the death touch. Those are his only two options. He doesn't know where you are, but you're super fucking fast. He's got about 2 seconds, less than 2 seconds, about 1.5 seconds to find his fucking ice block, or you're going to give him the death touch. Keep in mind, when you death touch him, as Ret Reckoning, you're going to you're going to be in combat, and you're going to come out of the invisibility. But in theory, the mage just died instantaneously, so it doesn't matter. So, okay, the mage counters your 10 seconds of invisibility with his 10-second ice block. Cool. You as the paladin just swap back into your resist suit. and you swap out your used trinket for something else, right? Well, basically what you've done there is you've used trinkets, you've used cooldowns and abilities to get into that magical place of I'm both unkillable and I have the death touch. That's why the mage had to ice block or die. And then you're right back into a resist suit and you're right back into the song that never ends again, right? Except this time your resist suit probably consists of like Gnomish Mind Control Cap or Goblin Rocket Helm, because you can force during the sequence of events you can force something very similar. If a mage blinks and you Goblin Rocket Helm them, they're going to be and you have a Wreck Bomb. You're going to be standing right in their face, like snuggling right up to them with a Wreck Bomb. And all you need to do to kill this, all the mage needs to do in order to live, is to ice block. All you need to do in order to kill him as the Ret Reckoning Paladin is use a macro where you gear swap into a full damage suit and click him, like and attack the mage, right? You have an instant attack that'll delete the mage, because you can both gear swap into a damage suit and instantly attack the mage without him being able to ice block whatsoever. Why is this? Well, if you have even one Reckoning charge, your character doesn't go through a swing animation anymore. It's just instantaneous the damage. So if he's waiting for a swing animation and then he'll ice block to try to use up, to try to put you in combat in a non-resistant suit and to use up your Wreck Bomb, that's not going to work because your auto attack is going to be instantaneous. He's just going to die. He's not that quick. So you can gear swap and hit him immediately and he just dies out of existence. So by Rocket Helm use alone, you can force them to ice block or die. And you haven't even gotten out of your resist suit again. So now we're talking about the second ice block that has been forced out of the mage, with you not having to get out of a resistance suit. Just the threat of you getting out of your resistance suit and instantly deleting him, just like when you were cloaked and moving fast, isn't going to be enough to force out the ice block. The exact same thing happens with Gnomish Mind Control Cap, because with Gnomish Mind Control Cap, either the mage comes to you, and again, you still have the instant ability to instantly delete him out of existence. It's the same scenario as with the Rocket Helm. The mage can ice block out of it, or after 10 seconds, it'll wear off and then instantly attack him, or he instantly ice blocks or he dies. You're in that weird scenario again. Or you get mind controlled and you go over to the mage. And when you go over to the mage, you're a paladin. So you're in this weird scenario where all you have to do is bubble, gear swap, attack him, and he instantly explodes, which is also an instant thing, because again, you can gear swap and auto attack instantly. So in that case, it would be like bubble gear swap auto attack, and he has to ice block or die. I don't think bubble puts us on a GCD. I could be wrong. You can't gear swap. Gear swap puts you on a very slight GCD. If you didn't know, it's like a quarter of a second or something like that. So what'll probably happen is he'll see the bubble. He'll see then a quarter of a second. He has to ice block. No matter how you look at it, it's like bubble. You're still in a resist suit gear, but you're physically on top of him. Like, is he going to blink away or something? Okay, you grenade him. You catch back up to him. You swap into your damage set. He dies. He has to ice block. Okay, so that's the third ice block that he needs to do that he does not have in this sequence of events, right? And all it cost us in that scenario was bubble. All right, whoop-de-fucking-do. I was in a resist suit. I may or may not have used it. But regardless, he's going to die at some point during the confines of these events. All right? So that's why it looks a little bit different for the Ret Reckoning Paladin, because they need the ability to both be in a resist suit and to get out of it and to threaten the ice block, and then the mage ice blocks, and then they're right back into the resistance suit. The only other way to do it as a paladin is to try to gear yourself in such a way. I'm not experienced enough with Ret Reckoning to know this. But to try to gear yourself in such a way that you're both reasonably unkillable as the paladin, and you still have the death touch. So you get into the scenario that Holy Reckoning enjoys. where it's like, yeah, when I touch you, there's a 30% chance that you die, but at the same time, when you're trying to kill me, I'm still in enough of a resist suit that it's not really a problem. Yeah, I might have to use trinkets that are defensive in nature, so Gnomish Recombobulator Ray. There's at least 2 resistance trinkets. One gives you like 100 to all resistances for like a minute, but every spell that hits you reduces that 100 by 10. But it's also School of Magic based, so they can't just arcane missile you and try to wear it out. That'll just reduce arcane damage by 10, 10, 10, 10, 10 every time you get hit. It's not like you don't have thick obsidian breastplate. Blah 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 blah. Right? There's the Lothar trinket that also has resistances. Major Recombobulator Ray, always absolutely amazing. Chad trinket in duels for Ret Reckoning. He counts as a defensive trinket that you can survive mages with. Then there's Tidal Charm counts as a defensive trinket you can survive mages with. Goblin Mortar is a defensive trinket you can survive mages with. What else? Arena Grandmaster is the other one you can survive mage's nonsense with. Basically, you're wearing less resist gear, so you're more susceptible to RNG and potentially dying, but you compensate for that with trinket usage and the knowledge that you can swap between your trinkets, and you just get yourself into this nice, comfortable middle ground of, yeah, I still have the death touch as a Ret Reckoning Paladin, despite the fact that I've made myself borderline unkillable, and you just play it out like we've been talking about this entire time. And the mage will suffer and likely die underneath those circumstances. Other trinkets come to mind that are technically defensive trinkets for this scenario, such as Jom Gobbers. Jom Gobbers is technically a defensive trinket in this scenario. Other trinket, because what it does is it lets you sit in even more resist gear, but you have a trinket that you can activate that you know for a fact is going to be viable in this very predictable sequence of events, that when you finally touch this mage is going to think you don't have a 30% chance to kill him, but in reality, you've got like a 35% chance that he just dies because Jom Gobbers trinket. Like, let me pause the video and I'll see if I can pull up Jom Gobbers here for a second for you guys to see exactly what I'm talking about. But any trinket that is also in the vein of Jom Gobbers, like Hand of Justice or specifically on activation trinkets, end up doing the same job. I won't pull up Jom Gobbers, but basically what it says is it says something stupid like every 2 seconds you gain attack power for like 20 seconds, and then at the end of it you have like 600 attack power. Well, since this sequence of events is so predictable, you can easily make contact with the mage when you've got like 5 seconds to go on Jom Gobber trinket, which means you've got like plus 500 attack power that you're hitting him with. Meanwhile, he's going to be thinking he's going to get tickled, and when in reality, there's a 30% chance homie just gets clapped out of existence. Hand of Justice is also kind of in that vein, but he's not quite as good. Hand of Justice is really awesome because you don't have to wait for the 30-second cooldown on the trinket. So, for example, you remember when you were chasing the mage, there was that gear swapping opportunity before Blink was available, right? If you have Jom Gobbers running and you see that trinket swapper opportunity become available, and you can very predictably be like, yeah, when he stops to sheep me or he blinks or some shit like that, I'm just going to grenade him and I'm going to get a hit at him because he doesn't have any ice blocks left over, and it's going to be a Jom Gobbers hit. Holy shit. Just switch over to I think it's like Black Hand's Breath. Is the Upper Blackrock Spire trinket that gives you plus 2% chance to crit, right? Very good under those circumstances. Doesn't have a cooldown, don't have to wait for the 30-second cooldown. You can swap to Hand of Justice right then and there. Don't have to wait for the 30-second cooldown. It's just going to be active, right? And very quickly you can see how these offensive trinkets are actually defensive trinkets / offensive trinkets. So either way, all roads lead to Rome here, right? Either you're wearing more resist gear and you're relying on trinket usage to give you the percent chance to kill the mage when you touch them, or you're wearing less resistance gear, but you wear more defensive trinkets to counter the mage RNG, which is the far safer option, but the gear that you are wearing naturally comes with some death touch capability. All right, let's talk about deep ret. Deep ret, particularly control ret, anything that we talked about that is viable so far. Deep ret, basically, he does it all, and he can do it all, and it's very difficult to try to figure out what is best for him. Because you can play the more defensive route, you can play the more resist suit route, you can play for a mana war. Basically, anything these other three paladins can do, deep ret can do, with one sole exception, and that is they cannot guarantee having a death touch. So Ret Reckoning Paladin versus Mages is the only Paladin that can guarantee having the death touch versus a Mage. When I say death touch, I'm talking like 90 to 95% plus chance that the sheer act of getting a Wreck Bomb on the Mage means they die. All right, Ret Reckoning is the only Paladin that can do that. Most deep ret Paladins, naturally, against a Mage, they come with about a 20 to 25% chance of a death touch versus a Mage. And so usually your best bet as a deep ret Paladin is to try to do the Holy Reckoning style, where it's literally like, yeah, when I touch you, there's like a 25% chance I'll do enough damage that I can kill you. And I also wear enough resistance and durability gear, and I do enough of gear swapping that I'm unkillable. So you literally, you don't try to do the Ret Reckoning thing, which is you use the same tactics, but you'll have mixed results, right? So you can use the Gnomish Cloaking Device and the Goblin Rocket Helm and the Gnomish Mind Control Cap, but the Mage may or may not ice block because he doesn't think you have a death touch, kind of a thing, right? And the whole purpose of those things but I mean, hey, if he doesn't ice block, he's going to risk a 15% chance he just dies right then and there, right? So you do all of that, you just don't have a guaranteed death touch. So instead you play the Holy Reckoning game, which is, it's like, yeah, I'm unkillable, and every time I touch you, there's a percent chance that you just explode. You die shortly after. Eventually, I'm going to get out the ice blocks. Eventually, you're going to start suffering the death touch. If you run too low on mana, I can always mana war you with the Skeleton Pet summons. If I start running low on mana, I can always get my mana back with these Skeleton Pet summons. And I just survive your nonsense until the 7-minute mark or whatever, and eventually I'm going to have bubble, and you don't have any ice blocks, and that's just like a Holy Shock Paladin or a Holy Reckoning Paladin. That's by far the best chance I'm ever going to have to kill you. There's almost a 100% guaranteed chance that you're going to die if I just gear swap into a pure DPS suit and I've got bubble and you have no ice blocks. I can guarantee you what the hell's about to happen. You're gonna kill him. So that is the full horrifying explanation of Paladin versus Mage matchup in horrible, horrifying detail. I'll also note that deep ret Paladins do a lot of their killing on Mages using Hammer of Wrath, because again, when Hammer of Wrath crits, it does twice as much damage. And they're so RNG all over the place as a Paladin, that a lot of times just getting the Mage below 20% life or below and Hammer of Wrathing them before you sheep is the number one way you'll end up killing a Mage as a deep ret Paladin. Just because every time you Hammer of Wrath them under those circumstances, if it crits, they die, right? And your RNG will be so all over the place that sometimes it'll be like they're 19%, they're 17%, they're 2%, they're 5%. Now they have to ice block. They're 2%. They're 25%. Fuck, like, all that stuff. So a lot of wrathing is how you kill them basically. Do not duel a Mage as a deep ret Paladin, pretending you are a warrior. You're either going into that matchup as control ret, which gears, you use the exact same gear the Holy Reckoning Paladin does. You just go into it with a control ret mentality. So we're talking Hand of Rag, heavy fire resistance, and then you're using Repent and then Goblin Mortar and Tidal Charm and all that stuff to do control ret things. or you're going into it with a mentality of I'm going to either be in a resist suit with some death touch capability, or I'm going to you could either line of tactic that Holy Reckoning uses or Ret Reckoning is viable. Just know that you're going to wear different gear in those scenarios, if that makes any sense. You're either wearing the exact same gear Holy Reckoning is wearing, and you're just making it easy on yourself and accepting the middle ground, or you're doing what Ret Reckoning does, and you're in and out of all. You're either all in on defense or you're all in on damage, and you're swapping back and forth from that. That will give you some serious death touch potential with the Gnomish Cloak device and stuff that the mage will have to respect or get deleted out of existence. And then basically you just live the life of the Ret Reckoning Paladin, but you're a deep Ret Paladin instead. Or you can live the life of the Holy Reckoning Paladin. You're just a controlled deep Ret Paladin instead. And that life, of course, will be Hammer of Wrath, Hammer of Wrath, Hammer of... Oh, look at crit, you died. Like, that will be your life. Or you'll just walk up to them and do so much fucking damage that they just delete them out of existence. You're like, oh, okay, all right, I guess everything just crit. Or it's like, Jom Gobbers plus, Hand of... Oh, shit, he fucking died. Like, all right, deleted. GG's, good game. Oh, shit, it's taking too long, 7-minute mark. Where's my bubble? Where's my Jom Gobbers? Where's my stuff? Where's my Goblin Mortar? Okay, now you just die horribly and screaming and GG's. Deep Ret Paladin also absolutely is in fucking love with the big one. If you are a Deep Ret Paladin, especially Control Ret Paladin, and you have not learned to love the big one, there is something wrong with you. Yeah, I know that sounds a little homo. Like, I'm not even going to say no homo. I mean, all the homo in the world. He loves the big one. Why is this? Well, because the traditional kill combo of a Ret Paladin is they hit you with an auto attack. They look at the RNG. They like what they see. Then out comes the 6-second stun. Out comes the grenade or the big one. And they get some extra auto attacks into you. They try to kill you inside of a stun, right? That's what Deep Ret Paladins do. And RNG can either fail them or come through spectacularly during that whole sequence of events. Well, if you're using Thorium Grenade, like let's look at this for a second, right? You auto-attack them, you stun them for 6 seconds, and then you Thorium Grenade them for 1.5 seconds. Congratulations. You've stunned the target for 7.5 seconds. You're probably using a 3.6 speed weapon. Let me find the calculator here. 3.8, I mean. 3.8 times 2. Oh, shit. We stunned the target for 7.5 seconds. But our third auto attack into this guy is only going to take place at 7.6 seconds, which means our enemy can do something, like stun us or defensive or some shit like that. That's not so good. When you get good as a Deep Ret Paladin, okay, you auto attack them. You look, by the time you even see the RNG and you register it in your brain and you go for the stun, like something like, 0.3, 0.4 seconds has transpired. So you can easily get in that third auto attack. But let's observe what happens if we're talking about the big one. Okay? The big one looks like this. You 6 seconds stun them, then you 2.5 seconds stun them because of the big one. It's a 3-second charge, but you don't care because you've got this super long swing time duration. All right, well now they're stunned for 8.5 seconds. What can we do with that? What does life look like that under those circumstances? What can we do with that extra second or so of time? Well, you can do something like, I don't fucking know, Hammer of Wrath them, which is a massive increase in your DPS. All right, what if you have anything else to add to the party? What if you're now Goblin Mortaring them, or you're Tidal Charming them, or something stupid like that? That's going to be 3 seconds at like a 25% duration, and we have to, so we're only stunning there for another 0.75 seconds, but we had 8.5, so now that's 9.25 seconds of stun before this guy could do anything? Holy shit. What does that look like if I divide it by divide by 3.8 or some shit like that? Oh, damn. So we almost got to another auto attack, and then suddenly you start looking at weird things like other items. So we had like 9.25 seconds of stun. Let's do Hand of Rag. What does Hand of Rag look like? 3.7. Hand of Rag has a 3.7 speed. Okay, okay. So we're not able to get an extra auto attack in with Hand of Rag, but we can definitely get in some Hammer of Wraths. It's looking really good, boys. Blah 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 blah. Right? What if we're talking about 3.25 seconds and we're using something like Kalmandor's Revenge, which I think has a 3.2 second swing speed, right? Pretty easy weapon to get, yada, yada, yada. I should also look into, oh shit. So at 3.2 seconds, we're starting to get very, very close to having another entire auto attack in this sequence of events. So let's go back. This is why I did remember Kalmandor's Revenge is a thing for Deep Ret Paladin. Let's say after we auto attack somebody, we wait like a third of a second, kind of a deal. We'll wait 0.35 seconds. All right. So we auto attack them. We wait we see the RNG. We go for the CC stun. We know the CC stun in total is going to be 9.25 seconds. We're adding another 0.35 seconds on that because we waited to look at the RNG, right? Okay, cool. Now what happens if we divide this number by 3.2? Did we get yeah, we did. We got an entire another auto attack with Kalmandor's Revenge in the sequence. You won't get another auto attack with Hand of Rag. If you waited a little bit longer, you might have gotten another auto attack in with, what is it? Dark Edge of Insanity, right? But you can easily see that we're getting Hammer of Wraths into this equation now. No problem. We can easily swap into a completely different weapon. So we could go a very fast one-hander and get in multiple attacks for more DPS. We could hit them initially with the slow speed weapon and then immediately go into a Kalmandor's Revenge and then open with our stun sequence. So we'll get that 3.8 speed weapon in first, but then we'll get another 3 fucking auto attacks in because Kalmandor's Revenge is just a really nice speedy weapon. All of this is off of the fact that the big one is something you're really going to want to start using as a Deep Ret Paladin. And again, the sequence of events will probably be hit them. Oh, God. All right. So just so we're absolutely clear, help me. I'm being repressed. The sequence of events will be I hit them with my Hand of Rag. So I hit them with Hand of Rag. Then I swap into Kalmandor's Revenge. Is that what I wanted to talk about? Kalmandor's Revenge? What are we talking about? We're talking about the big one? Hammer of Wrath? I forget, boys. I forget what the point I was trying to make here is. Yeah. I can't remember. Oh, I wanted to showcase Dark Edge of Insanity. Right. So let's say you hit them with a Dark Edge of Insanity. Okay, so you run up, you hit them with your 3.5 second Dark Edge of Insanity. You wait a whopping half a second before you do anything, which is more normal. It's more normal for you to be able to wait half a second because usually you're waiting to see if they're gonna do anything. It's are you gonna do something to stop me here? Can I actually pull the trigger on some stuff? What's going on? So wait half a second, which means our Dark Edge of Insanity is now a 3.5 second cooldown. And then we open up on our full sequence of events, which is 9.25 seconds. No, that's what I wanted to showcase. I'm going to add the extra 0.5 in, equals, and then we're going to divide it by 3.5, blah. You can see we're almost getting an extra attack in there. No, what I wanted to showcase is the sequence. Right. So you run up and you hit them with your Hand of Rag. Then half a second passes before you open up on them with your stun. You then stun them for 6 seconds. You wait the 3.2 seconds. You get the other auto attack in from your Hand of Rag. And then you go for actually and then you go for the big one. The big one has a 3 second charge up time, which means you're giving them a 0.2 seconds of time in order to do something. Which means you either have to wait longer before you open up, a little bit longer before you open up on this sequence of events, or you hit them and you go immediately into your Kalmandor's Revenge. Then you open up the hit sequence and everything lines up basically perfectly. Because by the time you swap to your Kalmandor's Revenge and then you go for the stun, It'll only be 3 seconds before the next Kalmandor Revenge a hit, which lines up perfectly with the big one, which means you can actually wait the 3 seconds before you get the hit in, then go for the big one. You miss no auto attacks, and you actually will get your Hand of Rag, Might of Menethil auto attack in. You swap to Kalmandor's Revenge, and then you stun them for 6 seconds. And then you get the auto attack in, then you go for the big one. The big one goes off. After the big one goes off, there's another like 0.2 seconds you have to wait or some shit like that. Then Kalmandor's Revenge attacks again. Then comes out your Goblin Mortar trinket. You're going to get that last Kalmandor's Revenge trinket in. You get multiple Hammers of Wrath. Not 1, 2 in this sequence of events, right? So you can easily weave in your first Hammer of Wrath. You can easily weave in your second Hammer of Wrath. I don't know what, he's giga dead if you got to the second Hammer of Wrath. I don't know how he lived. So usually there'll only be one Hammer of Wrath at the very end of this sequence, followed by another Kalmandor's Revenge attack. If they're still alive somehow after that, I would be absolutely shocked and dumbfounded. But know that Kalmandor's Revenge lines up absolutely amazingly in this sequence of events. Okay, we cool on this? Kind of important to know this when you're dealing with mages. Not super important for mages, but against any other class. Find your damn Kalmandor's Revenge, for the love of God. The other class that really loves Kalmandor's Revenge, even more so than Deep Ret, is Holy Shock. Because again, everything I just described with Deep Ret, a Holy Shock Paladin can do. They can hit you with a Might of Menethil and then swap in, or a Hand of Rag and then swap into a Kalmandor's Revenge and give you the 3 attack 9.25 second stun business, which is really and Hammer of Wrath in that entire sequence, absolutely devastating. It's one of their only ways for a Holy Shock Paladin to really burst on a target is using a Kalmandor's Revenge. All right, and of course, any other weapon that is around about Kalmandor's Revenge speed also works. I think Ashkandi is somewhere around that speed. Kalmandor's Revenge, if you don't know, is 3.2 seconds, and it has a proc on hit, which is why it's absolutely amazing. Anyways, I'm in the video here, and Deus Vult, boys.